Oh my God.
Hello, you're tuned into the All My Friends podcast. If we haven't met before, hiya. I really hope you're keeping well. I'm your host, Liam Oliver, and my guest today is Sprechen Records boss man, DJ, producer, and booker, Chris Massey. Chris has DJ'd at Kiss Me Again, Supernature Disco, Homo Electric, and Beat Herder Festival, amongst many others. When he's not behind the booth, you'll find him either booking acts for the Refuge or the End of Year Riot, sleuthing out some new acts for paper recordings, or building his own label, Sprechen, which is what we're here to talk about today. Now, that introduction probably doesn't even scratch the surface of all the stuff Chris has done. So before I butcher it even more, I'm going to say hello. Welcome, Chris. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm okay, surfing the COVID storm, but yeah, I'm good.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot for coming on to chat today. I'm really excited about our conversation. We're going to have a catch up and really dive into the nitty gritty of label management, you know, the highs, the lows, pains and successes. But before we get into all that, let's talk a bit about your own journey and your own musical influences. I gave you a quick introduction at the start of the show just then, but I really don't think I did you justice. So could you give me and the listeners a quick whistle-stop tour of your music career and pull out some highlights and some memories that you've really enjoyed from your years producing, DJing and running a label?
Yeah, sure. So I'd lived in Bolton. I was born in Bolton and brought up in Bolton. Used to go out around and about town. There wasn't always such a kind of scene happening there, but I think at the time that Bolton was one of them, you know, outside mill towns where there was a little bit of a scene and some quite good clubs that would go to. Bar Juice was one. We would go and watch Danny Whitehead, who used to run a night there. That was like on a Friday night, and then it was on a Saturday. And then I kind of got into DJing. I'd always been buying records when I was at school, just buying them because I liked the music more than anything. Never really thought of it as to get into DJing. And then eventually gravitated to getting some decks and just mucking about in the bedroom on them. Played at a couple of friends' parties and stuff like that. And then entered into a DJ competition that was held at a bar in Bolton and won that. And then with that came a residency at Revolution Bar. It was on a Monday night. And then just kind of from there, just putting myself about, played a couple of clubs. So I got quite friendly with Danny Whitehead. He kind of gave me my first gigs in Manchester. And then me and my friend Tom started to DJ as Uber Chic, which was like a funky house outfit that we did. And we sort of played all over, you know, from everything from Sankey's to going over to Sri Lanka and Romania to DJ. And we did that for quite a long time. I can't remember how long it was now, quite a while. But it just kind of naturally came to its end, run its course. And I'd started to go back to college then to study music and popular music and music production it was. And then from there, that kind of spiraled out and opened up other avenues and places that I could apply myself. I initially went back there wanting to do live sound for gigs. Again, never really that interested, certainly not in the record label, but I'm interested in producing my own music. And then, I don't know, something just clicked at some point and it was like, yeah, this is what I really, really want to kind of progress into. Part of the college course as well was a work experience module. And my tutor, Dave Smith, who used to, I'm not too sure what he's doing now, Dave, but he used to be part of Sparkle Street, which is Mr. Scruff's management amongst quite a few other artists. I don't know if he's still involved with it. I mean, he was a great guy. I've not spoken to him, I've seen him for a long while, but he kind of really took a shine to me. And he got me the position at Electrics, obviously who ran like the Electric Chair, which had finished 2008. So I think this was maybe a year and a half, 2 years after the club night had finished. And they'd done 1 year of the Electric Elephant Festival at Croatia. So yeah, started at Electrics, just half a day a week, just, you know, free work, or, you know, just having my expenses covered. and just learned so much there. And that kind of felt like a next stage in what I was doing or what I wanted to do, I suppose, because up until that point, I've been pretty content with what I'd been doing and thinking, yeah, I'm just happy DJing or whatever. But I knew that there was a lot of other stuff that I could progress and other places that I could go to and people that I could meet.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of kind of where I am now is really attributed to working for Electrics and the way that I got taught underneath Mogsy, who was the business manager there. It was kind of me and him working in the office with like occasional, check-ins with Luke and Justin, who at the time was still DJing quite a lot as the Unabombers and going out and about and kind of going overseas and doing festival work. But they were also in the process then of opening Electric Bar in Charlton. So the business itself was kind of evolving and shifting a little bit as well. But we were still quite heavily involved within clubs and club nights, which was great because I was then kind of able to focus energies on that. And part of that was running the bookings for the Mint Lounge. That was kind of overseen by Electrics, and that was a role that was kind of passed over to me in time. And yeah, just sort of, obviously could just talk about, and then this happened and this and that. But, a long story short is that I kind of just progressed my way through Electrics and to where I am now of kind of the events manager for any events that we do, which covers, venues like the Refuge, Electric Bar, there's Volta in Didsbury. Though not as many events at Volta because it's a little bit more food led, but we do, occasionally have some stuff in there. And more recently, Freight Island, where I've sort of worked alongside Sophie B in terms of, the programming and the entertainments there. And yeah, in amongst all that, that's kind of always been the backbone really of Electrics. But, I started to work for Paper Recordings. Funnily, Pete from Paper Recordings was my music business tutor at college, and I was kind of always hounding him about getting involved on the label, and there just wasn't anything to do. And obviously, Paper Recordings is a very independent label, so it's not like there's like me, Pete, and Ben who work on it. And then eventually, like a role came up there. It was Neil Diablo actually, who I'd got really good friends with, and I did a bit of work with him on his label. But he'd been working for Paper, and he had to leave it to focus. I think he was involved with 2022 opening at the time, or around about that time. And he just kind of put me forward, and obviously I'd already had extensive conversations with Pete about being involved. And so yeah, they took me on there, and I'm still kind of working there to this day, doing like a day a week, label managing, A&R in for there. And it's been great, Paper's been really good. Again, that just opened up another avenue, and kind of like with Electrics, really, it was almost like, well, not almost like it was, getting involved with a pretty really well-established brand, it's quite easy really to overlook sometimes, unless you were kind of like there at the time, just how big Paper was in the 90s, do you know what I mean? It was like kind of the house label to go to. And even now when you mention it to some people, quite a lot of the younger crew are probably not too aware unless they're, really into the house. But yeah, it still strikes a massive chord. And even when we sign artists now, they're kind of so buzzing to be on the label. So it's great that it's still got such legs and such appeal. And it's, over time it's been able to diversify as well in terms of the outputs that we've got. So it's, we've got 3 offshoots of the label now. And yeah, in amongst all that, probably about 5.5 years ago, I started the Sprechen label. I'd been working with Neil, like I said, on El Diablos, and Neil decided to kind of put everything to rest and just do a few sporadic parties and keep his Rack and Ruin Edits label going. And he just said, you should just start your own label if you want. And I was like, yeah, why not? And yeah, just kind of went from there, to be honest with you. And it's been really exciting all along the way. It seems like a bit of a naff word to explain it that, but it has, even up until now, the stuff that I've just been realizing this week and signing up for with the label and registering with and all that kind of thing. It's almost like it's taken form before I've realized, like I've not realized kind of how it's been growing and progressing until you take a step back, so yeah, it's that's kind of it, I suppose, in a nutshell. And still DJing in amongst all that, and playing some really great gigs and festivals that, as you mentioned before, Beat Herder in particular and Supernature being 2 standout ones. We Out Here Festival was it last year? No, it wasn't. It wasn't on last year. Was it 2019? Yeah, regular appearances at the Refuge. So yeah, I'm well up until obviously COVID, very lucky and fortunate to make my living in music. But obviously last year that kind of put things into perspective a little bit.
Yeah. There's loads of threads I want to pull on here because you've given me loads of great stuff to dive into. First off, let's have a shout out to Volta and 2022. I used to live in West Didsbury, and Volta was a go-to. They do some great small plates. 2022 as well. Do you know what I saw? Must have been 2015, maybe even 2014. When you look back, like time's mad. But I saw Greg Wilson there. I think it was one of their birthdays. And it was
I think that's when Neil was involved, because it was Neil and Steve who used to run El Diablos with Jamie Skyhill and Keith Griffiths from Funkademia, who kind of was all in that initial opening. And I think they maybe had it for like a year or two or something like that. So I seem to remember that they'd booked Greg. It might have been an El Diablos night that, possibly. I can't quite remember. We did a paper recordings party there actually with Chris Duckenfield and 2 Billion Beats, which was great. It was always it was a very cool space, that, weren't it? Do you know what I mean? I remember going in quite a while later, quite a while, a few years after, when I had the changeover and the ping pong was the kind of real big focus of it. And it was very cool in there, do you know what I mean? It almost felt like one of those pretty cool places that you might find in Prague or, somewhere like that, where it's just, it's not really one of anything, there's a really good bar offering. There's the DJ who's on wasn't too clever actually on the night. Just a bit
Shots
of that.
Fired.
It was, it was, do you know what? I shouldn't say that's really reason. It was just that Northern Quarter hip hop thing that you went in every single bar and it was just like everywhere, do you know what I mean? But they're doing a good job, the dance floor was busy and stuff, so it's probably just me being a bit snobby. But everyone was just cool and hanging out, playing ping pong, and I think they had a few pinball tables in there as well and stuff like that. So yeah, props to them really for where they'd got with it. I mean, I don't know how they've weathered through this COVID thing, but yeah.
Takeaway pints. That's what it is, takeaway pints.
Yeah.
Also, you did mention like label managing, and we'll put a pin in that because we'll come to it later in the show, because what is label managing? I'm sure you can fill us in on like what the day-to-day of a label manager is. One thing I wanted to ask as well, just based on the bio you gave us there, is do you still consider yourself as a DJ first then? Because obviously you came into this musical career through DJing, or do you feel that, you maybe hit a ceiling with what you could do in terms of being a DJ, or did that stop becoming the primary focus because all these new opportunities opened up before you? Or was it more just like a happy accident that sort of morphed into what it is now? Do you sort of see the DJing, and I'm going to use air quotes here, but like the young man's game before you maybe get into some more diversified things where you maybe think about running a label? Or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I suppose it probably needs a bit of an update. Like my bio always says, DJ, producer, remixer, event coordinator kind of thing. I mean, DJing is a skill that you can kind of always do. And it's like, to be honest with you, I kind of feel the older that I've got, the more knowledgeable I've got. Probably not like, I wouldn't say the better, because it's debatable what makes kind of a great DJ. But certainly, skip back 20 years ago when it was all very, what I would be playing would be like Sankey's tech house kind of sound. Not to put that down in any way, not at all. That's kind of what it was, very house and nothing else got a look in. Whereas I suppose if I look to how I would DJ now, I'll incorporate so many different sounds and styles into that set. Do you know what I mean? With a common thread running all the way through it. And I think that can only really come with sort of, age and maturity. Not always, do you know what I mean? Because there's some incredible DJs out there who I'm not just saying like, oh yeah, when you're young, you don't know what you're on about. Far from it. Do you know what I mean? I just, for myself, that's certainly what I found. Do you know what I mean? 20 years ago, I wouldn't be dropping Afro jazz track into the, on the back of a house track or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? So I think sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent then. Yeah, I think.
Hey, that's what we want.
Yeah.
I
think it's still, it's still DJ. Do you know what I mean? It's like, look, you know, I don't play at the Warish projects or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? And it's like I'm not. It's not such a drive anymore. That's just not drive. I suppose what's the right word to describe? It's not the be all and an end all. You know, I've kind of always believed, and even when I went back to college, do you know what I mean? That there's always got to be fail-safe options. Do you know what I mean? That what you can do. I mean, there used to be some really stupendously talented musicians on the college course that we were doing. It was kind of split into two. We were like the techies doing like the studio and recording type stuff, and then there was the musicians as well, and we'd have sort of separate lessons, but then we'd share lessons as well. And there was something like ridiculously talented singers, guitarists and stuff like that, but their thing was, that's all I'm going to be. Do you know what I mean? That's it. And they sort of like dicked around and didn't sort of turn up for the other lessons that you would do. And then it's like when you finish college, you know, or when we finished college, and they're not in that bubble of, oh yeah, it's Thursday night, we're playing at the Night and Day Cafe, and everyone from the college course goes down. It's almost a bit like, oh shit, what do we do? You know, a bit like I watched. I don't know if you're saying you're not really into films, but I watched this film Friday Night Lights recently. It's a pretty old film, but it's about this. It's a true story as well. It's all these American football players at this college, this school, and I think it's like Iowa or something like that. I can't quite remember. And I've seen it before because I'm not into sports, but I do quite like NFL, to be honest with you. So I've seen a few kind of like documentaries or films of it, and it's like you see kind of some of these football players who are just told from the get-go, yeah, you're going to play a ball, that's all you're going to do, you're going to be massive. So they just, you know, knob around and don't do anything else. But then, you know, they have one injury at school, and there's absolutely no career, but then they can't fall back onto anything else because they've not concentrated on anything else. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, putting that analogy into what I was saying before, I think it's just always good to have a lot of irons in the fire, you know, and that's why now when it's like someone asks me, what do I do? And I'm just like, you know, God, what do I do? And I have to kind of so, and that's why like sometimes we're focused. Sorry, one of the dogs is just trying to come in the studio.
No, it's all right. I can grab the cat as well if you want. Like we can.
Yeah, that's why I kind of keep myself busy with doing lots of other stuff, because you don't know when it's gonna end or where it will go. You know, being a DJ, there's always a generation thing coming through, and the thing is that people, and you know, within the industry, or whether it's press or promoters, kind of always want to be ahead of the curve and getting the next big thing. Do you know what I mean? So it's like what happens then is it's someone who's kind of new and fresh almost, as opposed to someone who's kind of got the experience and can really you know, work. You know what I mean? Yeah, so I just think it's good to just have those kind of other options going, you know, and it's you know, I mean, so I suppose to sum it now, I don't know, actually, I was going to say I'd maybe put myself as like an artistic director, because that's sort of what I do at the Carlton Club, which is a venue I got involved with last year, which is incredible and really, really exciting. But then I suppose the other thing is that I'm really kind of finding my feet and finding my way and really enjoying the whole actual producing aspect, and not in terms of just producing my own music, but producing other artists and nurturing emerging talent, which I'm kind of hoping to do a lot more with the label. I'd started to do it last year with a few artists on the label. So Kirby as a Muddy Feet persona, did some engineering on some of her tracks and got them ready for release, and the Night Giants as well. Did some stuff on theirs. Obviously doing my own things as well. There's a couple of others that I'm working with. Rita as well, who's a local producer. And that's kind of like a really exciting prospect, because one, you're kind of working with new talent coming through, which is always exciting. And you're just able to develop your own skills and your own knowledge whilst, you know, working on the job. And I mean, look, in an ideal world, I'd get them round to our house and in the studio, and you'd be able to sit there and explain kind of what you've done, you know, and it's, I don't want to ghost produce people at all, you know what I mean? It's just quite nice to a mentor, I suppose, you know what I mean? So that's been something that I'm really, really focusing on going forward. And, you know, with a view on that as to having Sprechen has a kind of bit of a like incubation station, you know what I mean? Not probably a bit bold to say like Motown, but just having it as this label where it's kind of known for having a sound, really. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's kind of come around in the last 18 months, 2 years, definitely, where, as I've mentioned before, because it's quite scattergun on the music policy. As in it reflects kind of my music taste and my, you know, when I DJ and what I like is a bit daunting at first, because it's like, are people going to get this because it's not a disco edits label, or it's not a deep house label, or it's not a techno label? And I was pretty influenced with stuff like what's it called, Compact, you know, the German label. Michael Mayer's kind of heavily involved with it. And that, at first, you think it's a techno label, but it's not. You know, they do like releases that's ambient. There's even some disco stuff, some quite sort of trashy electro stuff, and some, you know, it kind of covers a lot of bases. And that was really appealing to me, especially, like I say, because I like to be very diverse when I DJ, through the people who's influenced me along the way, such as Luke and Justin, the Unabombers, you know, Chris Duckenfield, you know, Neil Diablo especially. You know, that's kind of like what my influence has been. So I think with Sprechen now, it's almost able to, it is recognised from people that it is quite a variety of music. A mate of mine was chatting to, actually, Phil Rose, who does the AMF for Midnight Riot. Jaeger Rosa, his DJ name is, producer name, and he was kind of summing up to me, and he said, you seem to be on a really roll at the minute with that label. And he said what I really like about it, he said, not everything comes through I like, or it's not for me. But he said it's always interesting, you know what I mean? He said it's always good to get stuff through, you know. He said, and when something does come through that's on my palette kind of thing, it's like, you know, I can get a lot of plays out of it, and I really like it. And that's kind of what it is, you know what I mean? It's also like, it's not a case of putting something out that's too underground or too cool for school that people are scratching their heads with it, you know what I mean? But I kind of think that when you're into the same kind of stuff, you can, you know, like you would be, you know, as I'd say, like a like-minded soul. So it's like we were talking before about films and that, you know, and it's like, I'd say to you, well, check this soundtrack for this, I think you'd really like it, and that. So you kind of, do you know what I mean? You kind of all tuned in on the same wavelength. So you know that if you put something out that might be like quite, I don't know, ambient or a bit more chilled, it's almost like even people who are like buying and playing techno and stuff would like it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to go through like a bit of a quick fire as well.
Yeah, sure.
Just like a little quick fire round. Could you give us your top 3 sets you've ever played, and like the top 3 artists you've booked? That could be anywhere. You know, top 3 artists you've booked could be just like who you really liked, or the set they played on the night was amazing. And yeah, top 3 sets are pretty self-explanatory. The best 3 times you've had DJing out.
Gosh, I think with the sets, really. Homo Electric was good when myself and Gina played in the basement. And yeah, it was at the time when Gina's EP had just dropped on the label. And I mean, I'm good friends with Gina as well, you know, and I'd always wanted to get her on the label. So it was great to get a release, and it was such a really strong release. And we kind of did it and tied it in as like a little bit of a launch, you know, in like a bit of an unofficial way. But I mean, even Gina said it was kind of, you know, a night that stood out for her, because it was one of them where everyone that we knew were there, do you know what I mean? Like all mates and stuff had come down for it, and it was really, really good. And it was me, Gina, and Michelle Minetti that played in the basement at Hidden. So that was really good. That was really, really good. And it was like, I mean, I tend to, when I DJ, actually, even though I you know, quite sporadic on what I play, I quite enjoy playing it pretty tough as well at times, do you know what I mean? So it was good to sort of put my spin on that and play down that basement. So that was good. Supernature Disco, I mean, honestly, I think every single time I played there, it's definitely, that's my favourite place to play, definitely. And you know, over time, they've all become such really, really good friends of mine. Do you know what I mean? Not just the DJs, but everyone who attends there. And you know, my work of what I do at the Carlton Club now, that's come about because my friends that are on the committee at the Carlton Club, I met them through going to Supernature and then just chatting to them afterwards. You know, Richie V, who's one of the promoters and DJs, he now works on Sprechen, helping out with stuff. So, and there's something a special kind of synergy there when you play, that everybody is really, really tuned in. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, it literally is the only break is when people go for a cigarette and then they're rushing kind of back in. I think it was, I can't remember if it was the birthday that I played, or one of the birthdays. I play. That's the thing. Every time I play, it's always on the birthday. It's become a bit of a tradition. And I remember playing, I think it's like a Kerry Chandler edit of Mighty Real by Sylvester, and it kind of just builds with that, dig, you know, just builds with that for ages. So you kind of know what it is, but then when it breaks down, it's just like it's really sparse. It's like the piano chords, and just the vocal comes in. And there's a video of it knocking around actually online, and it's like literally everyone just like praying at a church and stuff like that. So that was really good. Me and Paulette played there back to back. That was great. I mean, Paulette's a friend as well, and we always have a really good crack. So that was good. I always like playing with Paulette as well, because it's sort of like we played a couple of times, and she's like, you plays really good house stuff. Do you know what I mean? And kind of, you know, tech. I know tech house is a really dirty word. I don't quite understand why it is. You know what I mean? But she's really good at mixing it out, quite driving house and tech stuff as well. Do you know what I mean? And then I'll kind of match that with the stuff I've got, but then sometimes mine might be a bit more kind of, I don't know, say like mutant disco house. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, it's always been really enjoyable. I mean, we played at Kiss Me Again. You know, that's another one actually. That was like incredible. That was just like literally not debauchery, but debauchery in the right kind of way. Were you not at that actually? Did you not come down?
I may have. I've probably come down to quite a lot of them. I've probably seen you quite a few places. Don't think I came to that Kiss Me Again.
I don't know if I'd seen you on that one. I mean, that was great. And I just remember like, because like just everybody was in there. Do you know what I mean? And there was like no holds barred. And I just remember like me and Paulette chatting, like DJing. And there was a group of like three lads just like, I stood in a circle just dancing kind of thing. And it seems that there was like that many tops off in there. It was like, you know, I think we were probably the only ones who had tops on. And then it was like you'd sort of turn in these three guys who were in a circle, just like literally dancing and that, were just like bollock naked, except for like the socks and the trainers on. Do you know what I mean? But no, I mean, to me, that's like the closest that you would get to like those kind of incredible parties that you would hear about, you know, in New York back in the day and stuff like that. And it was like, it really was, you know, come as you are. There was, you know, no one batted an eyelid in that. So that was good because it had that sense of like what clubbing should be. Do you know what I mean? It was really free. And it was, you know, even though there was scenes like that going on, there wasn't bouncers strong arming it in there or anything like that. You know, everyone was kind of behaving and that. So that was a real highlight. And they're great. The Kiss Me Again guys. They're lovely, lovely guys. Yeah, I suppose that's three in it. You know, festival things that we've done with Sprechen. Beat Herd is always just brilliant every time. You know, that's me and Gina that's done that together the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, maybe something like that. That's just, yeah, that's insane. Do you know what I mean? That's just brilliant because everyone's in there. It's one of the only sort of late stages that's open. It's only small as well, but it's like everyone's just packed in there, and you can just, no one's leaving. Do you know what I mean? It's just like you can just take it wherever you want, and everyone's sort of glued to the spot. Yeah, that's good. What was the other question? Three.
The other one was like your three like top bookings, and interpret top booking however you want. Like,
I would say, God, I don't probably like it would definitely be in no particular order, and there'll definitely be some that I'll remember after I've reeled some off. Kath McDermott is always incredible. Who's like, she's a really good friend, but she was like, along with Paulette, one of the original Flesh DJs. She now works like for BBC for Six Music. She's quite integral there. She might have been actually the full producer of it, but there was that Roisin Murphy special that was on over Christmas and New Year. She was kind of like really integral with pulling that together. She's just brilliant. Do you know what I mean? Like when she played at Suffragette City in the basement at the Refuge, that's an event that I kind of co-promote with Rena from the social service with Kath and Abigail Ward as well. It's just a big celebration of women in Manchester music, you know, during International Women's Week. But yeah, Kath was just pulling out. I remember she was playing, I can't remember what the tune's called, but it's off the latest or the last LCD Sound System album, which I've got, but I've kind of got it on the CD and I never really listened to it in the car. And I would never have thought of playing it. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, when I heard it coming in, I was like, shit, I've got this. What? I can't remember what it was. I said to Kath, and I was like, God, she told me, I was like, yeah, of course it is. But it absolutely went off. Do you know what I mean? And as I say, that's the glory really with, you know, booking a variety of people, especially people who really love music and aren't just on the, you know, on the treadmill of kind of playing a million gigs a week, is that, you know, really pulling out some interesting music. Yeah, she's brilliant. Casting is really, really incredible. Oh God, who else has there been that's really blown me away? It sounds bad because the thing is, normally when it's an event that I've kind of involved with, it's like you see it from a different angle, you know, in a similar way to when you're working with people's music on the labels and that. It's almost like the whole thing's a product because it's part of work. Do you know what I mean? So you probably don't get to soak it in and have that spiritual connection as much as what the people in the crowd or the ticket buyers have got. You know, it's almost a bit like sometimes you're like, right, brilliant, the last DJ is on, just going, sitting in the back room and just resting for a bit. I mean, Electric Elephant was always good for just pulling out, you know, some really interesting characters. Obviously, there was big names that we booked, if you kind of want to class them like that. But there was also a lot of people who would come to the festival. People who'd been coming just for a holiday, and then they get in contact afterwards and send us links. One was a chap, DJ Cosmonaut, he was called. I can't, Gregor, I think his proper name was. And I can't remember where he was from now, but it was, I kind of want to, I think it was Lithuania he was from, I think. And he just sent these mixes over, and it was like, oh, we came last year, you know, I'd love to DJ. And it was just incredible. You would put him on for like 4 hours, you know, 12 till 4 on the beach bar. And it was just like film soundtrack scores into classical music, into jazz, into, he really got the vibe of it, you know, and he was incredible. He was brilliant. And that's the real kind of shitter about not doing that festival anymore, is that there would be these characters and personalities that you would see once a year, and you just pick up where you left off, you know, and you would see them the year after, literally at the same position where you last saw them the previous year. Do you know what I mean? Probably at the same time, with the same kind of vibe going on and that. And he was kind of one of those guys. And him and his wife used to come with their dog, because, and this is where my geography might be out, saying is at Lithuania, it wasn't to get to Croatia, it wasn't too far for him to come. So they just used to drive, do you know what I mean? And just kind of like, and just stay for like the week. His sets were always incredible. I think there's a few knocking around online actually, and he was doing some kind of blog at some point, kind of posting up music and bits of stuff. But I think the last thing that I remembered he did, there was like him and his wife had done like a visitor's guide to where it was that they live. And it was all about, it was literally a map of all these incredible like woodland walks and through the hills and mountains, but like hot spots of where like mushrooms were growing. So it was like fucking brilliant. He would definitely be in a top 3. I'm trying to think who else. Mine's kind of racing now. Different people at different times, I suppose. I mean, you know, Weatherall and Sean as Alphos was always kind of something pretty special, especially really because Andrew had been playing at the festival. I think he played on the first one actually. Definitely, he was definitely like a bit of a resident, you know. And the thing with Weatherall is that kind of vibe is what he loved. You know, he wasn't kind of Ibiza and all that sort of stuff, you know, far from it. Well, that's why he loved the Golden Lion so much, you know, and he'd go and DJ there, but he'd stay for a long weekend, and then on the Sunday he'd just play like one of his music's not for everyone kind of sets, and that, you know, something that was a bit sort of quirky was his thing. And he did some amazing sets there. I mean, it was a bit of a musical education really for me, because again, in those early years, I should say, of Electric Elephant, my musical tastes are not what they were now. So it was almost like a development stage, really, to see these DJs and get an idea of what you can play, and it perfectly suits the mood. So it wasn't about banging out a lot of house music at 4 o'clock in the afternoon while at the beach bar. It's about playing the music that's suited to that time. And I remember there was a set that Weatherall played, and it was a beach bar set. And I remember Mogsy kind of going mental about it. And at the time, I kind of didn't really know who Weatherall was that much. I sort of knew the name, and I knew that he was kind of like from that kind of acid house era and scene and stuff like that. But it just him and other people that we were booking at the time, they just weren't DJs that were on my radar. So it was really good to see him playing this incredible set where he was just playing. It was a really good edit or rework of a Springsteen track, "I'm on Fire" by Cousin Cole. It's quite hard to get hold of now, actually. I mean, I managed to get a wav of it recently. I think Bill Brewster gave it me actually direct from Cousin Cole because I wanted to play it in a set. That was the first time I'd heard that, and it just suited the vibe perfectly. Do you know what I mean? But then later on that night, he'd be like paneling it on the main stage when he was doing like a more kind of banging set. And I remember, I think it was like after the second or third year that's when he'd started to do these Alphos parties with Sean. And I remember him saying to Moggs, "Oh, look, me and this guy Sean have started to do this Love from Outer Space kind of thing that's really enjoyable. What about bringing that over?" And so it kind of it stemmed from there, really, the whole Alphos thing in Croatia, with Electric Elephant. And it was great to see that grow. And, that just kind of spiraled into as it's still existing now, kind of, after his passing and that, and there's people that I'm now friends with through various means and through various people. And I've seen them all become friends with each other just purely from all going to the Alphos nights, so it's like this huge kind of like community driven event that just draws people together. It's pretty special. But yeah, their sets were always really good. Even up to when they would come and play the Refuge, seeing how they developed it, because I remember that initially it was always very, very slow and chuggy, maybe a bit blokey as well. Do you know what I mean? I think Sean kind of won't mind me saying that, or it's certainly the blokes gravitated to it a lot. I remember going to it in Leeds when Joe Morris put it on as a clandestino one, and I think me and my wife Lisa. I think Lisa was the only woman in there up until like about 1:30 in the morning or 2 in the morning. We turned around, was like, "Oh, no, there's a few more women here now." But you skip forward to where it is now, and it's just it's equal panning. You know what I mean? It's like it's sort of enjoyed by everybody. But I think Weather always had that big appeal for the blokes as well. Yeah, I think that'd probably be a 3. There's like I say, there's lots more. You know what I mean? It could definitely rhyme off a ton more.
Yeah, but that's brilliant what you're saying about there's always that one point, I think, in every sort of DJ or anyone who just loves like dance music, you see an artist or you hear a mix which completely sort of like makes you reevaluate what you can actually do as a DJ. And I remember that really clearly. Again, for me, it was Greg Wilson in the kitchen at Font when I worked as a chef there. And the head chef put it on, and I was like, I can do this. This is, it doesn't just have to be, big room bangers for Victoria Warehouse. I was like, this is an absolute revelation. I was like, this is brilliant. And like, just being able to see someone like that, or like Andrew Weatherall, where you can be like, I didn't realize that I can do this with music. It must have been like really, really cool.
I think also as well, and I mean, again, obviously, you're a bit younger than me, so I don't know kind of, because I certainly see how different it is now, where there's people, like I say the age that you are, where it's like it's very open to lots and lots of different music, and maybe it was just me, or maybe growing up in Bolton and stuff like that. But it was like when I was younger, it was almost music stuff was still a bit tribal in the way that you were into what you're into and nothing else really got a look in. Do you know what I mean? Certainly like with DJing and what music you bought and that, I mean, I was like, trance was my thing. I was like massively into trance, and that's all I would buy and listen to and go to Cream and stuff like that. And you know, just do fucking tons of ease. But it was kind of like, there was some house stuff that I was buying, like some like early Bob Sinclair stuff, and obviously Daft Punk and Thomas Bangalter on the Roulet label. But it really was only when I got older. I suppose, in fact, no, do you know, maybe it was when I was getting around like late 20s, early 30s, and especially, like I say, I've always got to credit Electrics for this, of that thing where you can jump around the genres. Do you know what I mean? And it makes it more interesting. You know, I mean, we used to get, when we was doing the Electric Elephant, and obviously agents would get in contact, and it'd be like, looking after such and such a DJ, love to get them on at the festival, or even like DJs or people that had tracks out, and we would contact their agent and ask for like some mixes to listen to, and you know, no names mentioned or anything, and it'd be like, it is still the case. No, it really is. You know, you'd listen to the mixes, and it would be like, after 45 minutes, it's still the same deep house kick hat snare kind of pattern that's going along. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I don't even think that's a case of something where, oh, you've got to be in a club and it's really dark and like off your head to listen to that. It's like, it's just fucking boring. Do you know what I mean? It's like, there's no kind of like, there's no sort of progression in any kind of way. There's no variety in it either. Do you know what I mean? And I just think there's something, what I found was really interesting is that you can be playing a house track that's like 120 BPM to 124, 125. But the thing is, that's also the same BPM of a lot of like, say like Afro records, you know, techno records, you know, disco, you know, all these kind of, even like some stuff that's, when I say breakbeat, I don't, you know, not like a Crafty Cuts kind of thing. I mean stuff that's, you know, even like an old say electro breakdance tune. And the thing is that there's just like, there's a lot of variety of throwing that kind of thing into the middle of a set. Do you know what I mean? Because it'll totally catch people off guard. It's like if you're playing something that's a real sort of like head down, you know, moody as shit, you know, techno laced house track. But then on the back of that, you do just bang on like a Sylvester track or something that all of a sudden is like, you know, it's like it perks you up again. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I just think there's something really interesting in doing that. I seen it, the first time that I saw it was when I first started to work for Electrics. And there was, it wasn't an electric chair. Well, I suppose it was an electric chair event, but it was Electric Chair Saved My Life. I think it was like an album launch, because I seem to remember the album that they were doing. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's the black one with a chair in different colours on.
Yeah.
It's like a mix album that was coming out, and they'd done a couple of parties in London, as I remember. But then they did one at the Roadhouse. I've not been working there that long, so I was like, yeah, I'll come down, you know. So I went down with like Lisa and one or two of my mates, and it was really good. I can't, honestly, I can't remember a lot of the music that was played in there. But what I do remember is, I remember Luke playing that Ashley Beadle edit or rework, whatever you want to call it, of Kate Bush running up that hill. And that was like, for me, like Kate Bush was always massive when I was at home. Like my mum loved Kate Bush, and me and my brother really did as well. And it was just really weird hearing it in a club that was full of people, where normally my experience of being in somewhere like that with a club full of people is when it's like, you know, proper banging, and it's like, it's almost like, yeah, that's what stuff's got to be to make people lose the shit, is like some big banging and breakdown and, you know, and stuff like that, and hands in the air moment. But don't get me wrong, I still incorporate bits and stuff like that when I'm making music now, do you know what I mean? But it kind of also made me realise that when you're DJing, you put a track like that on, that even without an Ashley Beadle edit, the original tune's amazing, do you know what I mean? And it's like, it'll do something, and it'll strike a chord with people that just playing a load of up-to-date Beatport top 10 house tracks won't, do you know what I mean? Because it's like, you play it, and again, this, you know, still stemming from like stuff at Electrics, that's what I kind of really found at Electric Elephant, is hearing loads of music there. Fleetwood Mac, I mean, flipping out, if Psych Magic got any kind of royalties from that rework they did of Dreams by Fleetwood Mac, I swear to God, that first year that it came out, like they'd have been fucking millionaires from the amount of DJs who played it at Electric Elephant. Do you know what I mean? Because it was like, it was so huge, and it kind of, and that's a track that was like, used to be in the car all the time when we was going on holiday. And that's what made me realise at that festival is that there's all these kind of tunes that are like, you know, ones that you remember or older stuff that you can be dropping in amongst new stuff as well. Do you know what I mean? Because, and again, this feeds into what with me setting Sprechen up, there's a kind of common theme that runs throughout them all. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to explain it. It's just kind of some person that I feel and what I see. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like someone might send me something. So I've got some tracks at the minute actually that I'm working on that are by Lena C, who she used to be part of the Migusta crew, who do like incredible sort of nights where it might focus on Middle Eastern music or South African music. They're a real kind of like a great bunch, really good. And yeah, she used to be part of that crew, and she's living in Hebden now. And she's a brilliant DJ. Her radio shows on Reform Radio are flipping incredible. And she's DJed for me a few times, and she's resident at Electric. But weirdly, we've never actually met. Just always chatted over email and phone and that. And I'd seen that she'd started to put quite recently that she was a producer. And I was, to me, it's like someone who's playing that kind of interesting music with that kind of knowledge must be making some really interesting music as well. And I'd hit her up and I said, "Oh, you know, are you making some music? I'd love to hear it." And she was like, "Yeah, but I've not really sent it to anyone and this and that. I was just going to put it on Bandcamp." And she sent me this stuff over, and it was flipping brilliant. It was like really, really good. You know, a little bit. In fact, the main track doesn't really need a lot of stuff doing on it. You know what I mean? I offered to do some work on the other stuff she sent me. It's just the arrangement of it all is fine, and you know the musicology and stuff in there, and the stems and samples she's used are brilliant. Just needs a bit of tidying up and just kind of a bit of, you know, sprinkling, magic dust sprinkling on it. But it's like what she sent me is really kind of quite unique to anything we put on the label. And it's like you probably would have played it 2 o'clock in the morning in like a, you know, manky basement anywhere, but you would play it on a boat party in Croatia or as the sunset's going down. Do you know what I mean? And it would be like absolutely like amazing for that time. Do you know what I mean? So that's that kind of, and to me, that's kind of like the same as the stuff that I got off Gina, you know what I mean? Where it's like, it's quite, Gina stuff, you would, you know, you play it at the right time. I suppose really it's that common thing of like, it's the right thing to play at the right time. Do you know what I mean? And it's a bit more interesting than just putting out a disco edit or a deep house track, you know what I mean? And that's not talking down to anyone who puts that music out. The Midnight Riot guys are really good friends of mine, you know what I mean? And they sewn that up and do it really well. I suppose I just quite like dipping into things, you know what I mean? And just trying stuff, you know, and it's obviously at first when we started the label, I had to be like couldn't be too scattergun with it. But I think over time that we've got the trust in that, you know what I mean? We're able to do that a little bit more, you know. Richard was saying actually, like I say, Rich from Super Nature who works on it, he was saying that he kind of sees Sprechen as being this sort of label that he thinks about in the same way that he would always think of like Warp recordings, do you know what I mean? As in it's got something that at its heart is electronic music, but it's kind of like quite different stuff as well, you know. Not all of it you're going to play in a club, you know, some of it you might just listen to at home, but it kind of all shares this kind of common thing. And I don't quite know what that is, to be honest with you. It's like it's quite hard to bottle it and put something against it. But yeah. Sorry, that went off a tangent.
I wanted to go off a tangent, but I'm really, really glad that you've actually brought it back to talking about Sprechen, because we've been having such a great conversation. I don't think we've actually mentioned the label that much yet. So I think we should actually get on to talking a bit about label management and talking about like how to run a label and how you run Sprechen. I did have some questions lined up about, you know, why start a label and how do you go about starting that? But I think we've already covered that just in the conversations we've had. You know, it seems to be a very process where you just feel it out as you go along. But one thing I did want to focus on, and one thing I did want to ask you, which we have touched on a bit already, but I'm going to ask it again, is, you know, Sprechen's ethos and focus on like dance floor focused records, but, you know, from any genre. You know, I've seen a few other labels take this approach, and I imagine it's very liberating and fun not being tied to any one sound. Like, how has that mission or that mission statement helped you find like new music and artists?
I mean, what I tend to do is if going back to what we were saying about with Lena before, you know, it's like you make that connection, and it's like it's someone who's really cool. You know, it's obviously got an incredible record collection because I've heard the sets they've played, and then it's, you know, if they're producing, it's like, well, they must be producing something really interesting. So that's what would lead me down that path. I like working with new people as well. Do you know what I mean? Because there's just a bit, I don't know, there's a lot more kind of interest and a lot more sort of sense of achievement than just trying to chase down big names. Do you know what I mean? I'm quite fortunate, you know, people who are my friends are, you know, are quite known as DJs and working DJs, or producers as well, you know. So there's always like quite a handy crew to call on to check music out. People whose opinions I trust, do you know what I mean? But also to get music off them. But it's certainly not driven where I have to be sort of like having music by the top 10 people that are, you know, top 10 resident advisor DJs, or, you know, DJ mag DJs and stuff like that. Obviously, as I'm saying that, Scream did a remix of that See Through Hands release. That kind of came through the band, but it was great, you know what I mean? And I think obviously Scream's got such an appeal that he's, you know, this huge kind of name on the dubstep scene, but obviously the more he's kind of gravitated into house and disco and stuff now. And just a really, really accomplished producer. He's done a remix for a certain ratio, actually. As I have myself for the new album that I think will be dropping at some point this year, amongst a lot of other really good names on the remix package. Yeah, I mean, it just gives you the freedom to approach. Yeah, I don't know. I suppose, how do I sign people? Yeah, do you know? It's just if it interests me, to be honest with you. And I know even where I'd said before about, you know, maybe not being, you know, disco edits driven or deep house driven, however you want to call it, is, you know, I put the Electric Chair release out, which was disco edits and stuff with Bill Brewster's that was disco edits. I mean, they were kind of like maybe a little bit of an exception because they were very different, different choice of source material, especially Bill's stuff. That obviously Bill's just this huge encyclopedic knowledge of music that, you know, we could all only bloody ever dream of. That he'll just pull out tunes that are just so obscure, do you know what I mean, and does a rework of them that they kind of almost breathes fresh life into them, which I think is a lot more interesting than if someone just shoves another kick drum under like a bloody Shalimar track or a Chic track. You know, that's the kind of thing that I do tend to stay away from. But yeah, you know, I don't close the barriers on anything. Do you know what I mean? It's there was a woman producer, Stephanie Chu, who sent me some tracks through that were really good. I gave her a bit of feedback actually, but she's not got back to me yet, so I hope I've not caused her any offence on that. But she also has this production outfit that she does quite sort of chilled and not ambient as in like there's no beats in it, but she seems to be like an incredible piano player. And I was really hoping to get some of that stuff offered, do you know what I mean? So that just comes through. It's like, you know, she was on Instagram. She looked really cool. She was doing a show for Melodic Distraction in Liverpool, who I do a radio show for. So there's almost like a bit of a, you know, anyone who's doing a show on Melodic Distraction seems to have really cool music selection. So yeah, just check them out, you know, and that's what I do. And it just seems to, and that also then what's quite interesting is that is when you kind of find these producers who are maybe at a stage where the music's not quite at a level to be able to be produced, but all the nuts and bolts are in there. And that's when it's like, can kind of offer to work with them, do you know what I mean? And offer Sprechen as a platform to release the music on as well, you know? So it sort of feeds into that a little way. So sounds a bit like I'm like grooming them, I suppose, doesn't it? But it's not quite as sinister as that, you know.
You chose the word, not me. But
yeah.
I mean, I think nurturing talent is a great thing to do. Don't be ashamed by it.
Yeah, nurturing's grooming's a horrible word, isn't it? But I mean, the thing is, when I'm working, and certainly when I'm not doing as much work with electrics at the minute because the event stuff has all dried up. But I would be in the office on my own, and I'd just have like if I was scrolling through Facebook and something would come up in my feed and it was a mix by somebody, then if it's someone I'd not heard of or someone that I was aware of or someone local, I'd check it out, and it was really good. And then I just like look at them as, potential to DJ somewhere. I mean, that's the benefit of looking after various venues that need various music styles. Do you know what I mean? It's like if someone's just doing a complete banger set, then it's like, right, okay, well, they could maybe work for like the NDA Riot. If someone's playing like some really quite obscure, esoteric, Balearic stuff, well, that could really work for the Refuge in the daytime. If someone's just playing disco and disco edits and kind of like quite familiar stuff, it's like, okay, well, that could work for Saturday night at the Refuge. Do you know what I mean? And it's like it's really interesting. I mean, that's how I came across the All Hands on Deck crew, because they were always seemed to come up in my feed when they were doing a show for MCR Live. The station that ran it finished a couple of years ago. And they were great, and it was like kind of what they do and kind of having this platform and these workshops for this, demographic of like LGBTQ and, non-binary is like a kind of place where they can teach DJing and within an environment, and for people who might not feel too comfortable of being out in a club environment, you know what I mean? I think that's really great. So I thought that was brilliant. But I mean, the music they played was insane as well. It was really, really good. I'd just never been able to get them on at anything because the shows they played, it was like just really, really good music, but it was really cool, and it was like, I'd always struggled to have got them on somewhere. I did want to get them on at this year's Suffragette City, and we all signed off to get them on. But they just weren't able to get back to me in time to confirm. They've actually emailed me back this morning, to be honest with you, on some stuff, which I need to shout them back on. But yeah, that stuff like that is probably, if I have a process of finding stuff, that's sort of how I would find them, and that feeds into what I do with paper recordings as well. It's obviously papers. It's a bit more wider now in terms, because we've got paper recordings, which is like the classic paper sound, but then we have paper disco, which is probably a bit more. It's not disco. It's probably a bit more dance floor aimed and friendly, and then paper wave is the newer one, which is definitely more on the sort of left to centre. Esoteric kind of sounds. So there's quite a wide variety of options there to put people's music out on if and when it ticks a box, and if it strikes a chord, and if they're interested in doing it as well. That's the other thing. And people will send me stuff, or people get in touch. A guy got in contact the other day from St. Petersburg in Russia with some tracks that were really good. So I've signed those up. I just want to support more females, to be honest with you. It's something I'm always mindful of now. Well, not even mindful. It's just a given that my lineups that I book for anything is diversity. It's a bit sad, really, sometimes when you still see lineups somewhere and it's just all blokes. Do you know what I mean? Especially like with some like younger promoters, I'm saying producers, that are putting events on that still just seems to be very sort of lad driven. There's a lot of really great female DJs out there. That it just it's not even playing field yet. It's kind of getting there. Do you know what I mean? It's still quite tough on the producer front, and that's kind of why what I really want to do now is just again going back to Lena, something like that, is just be able to support them and help them along that way. Do you know what I mean? Whilst being able to put amazing music out as well. So yeah, that's kind of always it's weird whenever we do anything like that. I never want it to be like, yeah, I support women and women. It's like, because it shouldn't be done that you're making a thing of it. Do you know what I mean? When we did the Suffragette City event, and I mean, I'm the only lad who's involved with that, and I remember kind of like saying to Kath McDermott and Abs and Rena, and I was like, do we not have to be careful that we're shouting about this is women, and they were like, no, don't worry about it at all whatsoever. So it was quite comforting for them to hear that. Do you know what I mean? I just think, you don't want it splashed over a thing that it's like, all female DJ line, just women and stuff, you know what I mean? But as I say, it's something that's kind of always at the forefront of my mind when I'm A&Ring for Sprechen and for paper as well. And to be honest with you, I mean, one thing that I've always found, going back to like All Hands on Deck crew, you know, certainly with Lena, you know, even like the Meat Free crew and stuff like that, is it's like, you see, like, I don't know, women DJs seem to just play a bit more interesting music. You know, if there's like a group of like 5 lad DJs, it's almost certain that 4 and a half of them might be playing like pretty tracky deep house, whereas it's like, I seem to find really with the shows that I hear from female presenters just seem to play out really quite interesting and across the board music, you know. So yeah, that might just be a coincidence, I don't know.
Yeah. You've actually touched on a few things I want to ask you about next, where I think this is the part of the show where we do get into the nitty gritty of running a label. Can you sort of give us like a bird's eye view of maybe what like a standard day looks like for you? You know, how do you divide up your day? Are you mainly scouring the web for artists? Are you pushing new releases to places like Mixmag? You know, what are the key partnerships you've made that have made running a label easier? And like, how do you go about finding, sourcing music, signing it, and then like distribution as well? Like, you know, if you could like condense that down into like a 10-minute whirlwind, how do you even start?
To be honest with you, it's pretty casual. I mean, I tend to always try to be ahead of myself in terms of like bookings and schedule. So say for this year, there's 3 releases already in the schedule. One's dropping next week. I've got a few others waiting around, but I just want to get a bit more diversity within there. So it's like I can, you know, the schedule for the rest of the year is a bit more diverse. I mean, ideally, probably the rest of this year is booked up, but, you know, we'll squeeze a few more in. And the thing is, once they're kind of uploaded to the software that I use for the people who do my distribution to all the digital stores, it's just about building the momentum around that. You know what I mean? Obviously, social media is a pain in the ass as it is. You've just got to keep kind of, you know, getting stuff out there and shouting about stuff and mentioning stuff, and just not always obviously going in with the sales posts. That's where it becomes a bit difficult really to keep up with doing that kind of thing. Try to be a bit more interesting with what we do. So we do like Spotify lists, you know, Spotify playlists. There's the mixtape series as well. You know, one thing we started concentrated on through last year, which is kind of there's quite a few irons in the fire with it, but they're all at various stages because of COVID, is just collaborating with some other brands and other creatives as well. You know, one thing we're trying to do is work with it's like an artist and producers project, where in a nutshell it will be a selection of producers via Sprechen who will be partnered with a visual artist each. So I think it's like 6 producers teamed up with 6 visual artists, which will be done via an open call. So that could be visual artists of like photography, film, sculpture, you know, painting, you know, kind of any installation, any kind of way. And we want to open up a conversation between the two about what is electronic music to them and how does it sort of infiltrate, how does it influence their you know, lifestyle or creative thread or their sexuality or their social circles. And just a piece of music will be created through that conversation, and then the visual artist will create a piece of visual art to kind of represent the music and the mindset as well, which I know sounds a bit highbrow, but we just thought it'd be really interesting. And Rich, who works on the label, he's an artist and he's got a gallery space in town. So, you know, we would do that, and we would, you know, bring in some workshops with it and an exhibition launch and performance evening and stuff like that. We was going to do another one as well with a sustainable clothing company that a friend of mine runs, that would see 4 artists, 4 producers create a piece of music that would be basically kind of 4 genres. So there would be a Balearic section, it won't be as naff as this, like a Balearic section, a disco section, a house music section, and I hate the term world music, and global beats is even a bit more naff, but kind of on that Giles Peterson-esque Worldwide FM sort of sound. And then the sustainable clothing brand will be a fashion show where the piece of music created will be played whilst there'll be a fashion show of sustainable clothing to represent that kind of musical style, if that makes sense. So the Balearic one it's not going to be like espadrilles and caftans, but do you know what I mean? It will kind of be sort of to represent the music style as well, whilst also creating awareness of sustainability and reducing the carbon footprint, you know, through not using fast fashion and stuff like that. And these are all kind of ones that we wanted to get funding through and stuff like that, the Arts Council funding and stuff. But it's so difficult because they would be quite event led, certainly the fashion show one as well. And obviously we just don't know how and to what degree we can do that. So that's a bit of a stickler. Also just looking to collaborate with other brands, a couple of local breweries speaking to about doing something to tie in with a release as well. You know, and like branding up a beer or an existing beer and kind of doing it as a special, just a special run of it and stuff like that. And so that's the kind of stuff that goes in. I wouldn't say a day-to-day basis. I mean, I don't certainly have, it's like, right, today I'm just doing a label day. I mean, that probably should be, to be honest with you, but at the minute, there's just a few other things I'm doing, applying for Arts Council funding and bits of work here and there that just means can't really give it a solid kind of day, do you know what I mean, to catch up on stuff. But it kind of almost doesn't need it as well. The sort of quite relaxed approach and casual approach, it works well with it at the moment. Do you know what I mean? As I say, the kind of A&Ring of stuff and signing music, we're kind of quite ahead on that. And also what's quite good, I'd go back to the producer who got in contact from St. Petersburg, is people are getting in contact all the time, you know what I mean? So that's good that the label's got that momentum now, that people want to be on the label. And, you know, some people get in touch and it's stuff that's probably not right for the label. But then some stuff comes in and it's really interesting. So yeah, we'll kind of sign it off. I've just recently taken on a girl, Ellie, who's ran a couple of parties with her boyfriend, who's a DJ. And she's also she's been studying, or she still is, at BIM, the music college in Manchester. And she's shaping up to be really, really good so far. You know, she's kind of really all those little, they're not like the jobs where it's like, oh, I can't be asked to like get an intern into it. Far from it. You know, it's those kind of jobs really where it's almost like it kind of pays really someone youthful doing it. You know, so she's really looking into Spotify and how we can get playlisted more on Spotify and stuff like that. You know, because the label feels like it's a bit of a position at the minute where it's been doing well for what it's done. You know, and it's kind of paying for itself, and we can pay royalties out and stuff like that, and it's not too bad. But it's like now I feel like it's at a period. It's like, okay, we really need to like how can we move this on? You know what I mean? So, you know, a friend of mine who got in contact about doing, you know, trying to do some syncing for the label. You know, like syncing it for adverts and TV shows and films and stuff like that. Obviously, like I say, the thing that Ellie's on board and what she's doing, and Ellie's kind of also been quite good so far with. You know, being stuff on the social media and doing the kind of posts for us and just being able to get stuff up. And it helps, like you know, I mean, I'm 40 and Rich is kind of like 50, I think, maybe like 51, 52. And Ellie's like, you know, 20, 21. So it's
gotta get on them TikToks, man. You gotta get
but exactly, but do you know what? Exactly with stuff like that. And it's what's been really good is that it's not, you know, from the Zoom meetings we've had with Ellie, and it's almost like, you know, so what would you do? What's your interests, you know what? And she had like a load of questions that she wanted to ask. And, you know, for me and Rich, it's like, you know, we do what we do with the label. And it's like, you know, when we have a release out, we have a relationship with certain blog or music pages that would do a premiere of the track and maybe a bit of an interview and stuff like that. And it works well, you know, we get some really good content of it to share online and stuff. But, you know, our thing is, it's like, we were kind of saying to Ellie, you know, is that, do you think that's the best practice of what we're doing? You know, what would you do? What would you look to do? And, you know, do we need to be doing stuff on TikTok, and do we need to be doing this and doing that? You know what I mean? So it's quite interesting, and it's good to get someone on who, like I say, is not only like youthful, but is also, you know, run a couple of club nights that look to be really successful, but I think COVID's kind of put it on play, but is also studying, I think it is like a music industry, a music business or something at BIM as well, you know what I mean? So yeah, you know, it's that's kind of helping a lot as well, and it's freeing up my time to try and establish and kind of get this kind of thing of you know, having the label to be somewhere where we can the people that we do find is work with them and work with their music on as well. So it's quite an interesting period at the minute. It's quite an interesting transition. Yeah, it's very casual. It's got a very casual approach. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I'll like get a job list up and it's like, shit, I need to start doing stuff like that, and emails kind of pile up a little bit, but it's just like anything with work, you know what I mean? It's just, you just have to sort of like, what you call it, prioritize stuff, so it's like well, like I did a royalty reports run the other day, and it's like people have sent me their invoices to be paid, so it's like, right, top of the list, I've got to get, I'll probably do that today or something like that. So it's like, got to get stuff like that done. I mean, working under Moggs at Electrics, I can't really credit him enough with making me become organised with doing that kind of prioritising stuff. And sometimes it gets the better of you, do you know what I mean? You just, like he'd always say to me, you just got to take a bit of a step back, do you know what I mean? Take a few breaths and just be like, right, let's just look at this and just section it off and section it out. And not do, there's a term for it, isn't it? Where it's like, if your job list is kind of like all the boring stuff is what actually needs doing, but the fun stuff is like, that's what you just do because it's easier to do. It's about kind of not doing that, about sort of like, right, this needs to be done. So it's kind of like what we're doing today, you know what I mean? It's like, right, that needs to be done today because we've got to get it done. I had to record a show for this Sugi, I think.
Had to record it. You should want to do this. What are you on about?
No, what I say is,
put your foot in it now, man.
I had to record it because they need it for Monday or Tuesday because it's going to be broadcast soon. So I'd been getting the music together for it. Sugi magazine, it's called. It's a French magazine, and the concept of it was that focusing on Manchester artists and Manchester producers and people that we've worked with on Sprechen or want to work with and stuff like that. So it was really good putting it together, but I just thought, right, I've got to get this done now before weekend kicks in. And then I can just send it to them, and then that's fine for Monday. And then, I've got this Arthur Russell show to do for Reform Radio. I'm really excited about, part of the LGBTQ month. So I said, asking, has anyone got any thoughts on what they want to do? So I wanted to do it, focus it on Arthur Russell. So that's the next thing that I've got to get done as well. So, yeah, that's kind of answers, I suppose. Done it in a weird roundabout way.
There's two things I want to mention there, which is first, like Sprechen at the moment, from what you said, isn't even a full-time job, which is amazing, because if you look at the label from an outsider's point of view, you must think that this is like a massive team working on it. So it's quite interesting to hear from the inside that like it's still something that, maybe it's like a bit of more than a passion project, because obviously it generates you income and it's like, it is a job.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I think people look at things like that and they see like, this big established label. It's still like quite achievable for like people to do, and it's still quite like approachable. I feel the same thing about the blog, all my friends at times as well. Like a lot of people from the outside have been like, oh man, this, it's still just me at the moment, really, just doing it. So it's amazing how much you can do as one person if you're just like driven to do it.
Of course.
I think the next thing I wanted to ask, I want to tie these together as well. You mentioned that you have like 1 year of releases all planned out for the year now. So would you say that's normal practice for a label, or are you super on it so you avoid stress? And I'll add the next question on as well is, what would your advice be maybe for beginner label owners and producers who either want to set up a label or get featured on a label? So, what are the sort of the do's and don'ts to like label management and getting signed?
So I think in terms of the signings, I mean, look, when I started the label, I wanted to just do 5 to 6 releases a year. I still do try to not do too many, but it's like, just like good music comes through. And it's like, I suppose, like now I'm not actively A&R in any stuff, because as I say, we've got the first 3. I've got 2 releases by a guy, Delahaye. So that's like 3? That's like 5 already. As I say, I've got the release of Lena's. There's this project I'm doing with Manchester International Festival that will be released on the label as well. And then there's a couple of vinyl releases knocking around in that, which will have digital releases as well. So it already starts to become quite hefty. Do you know what I mean? So I'd probably be, but you see, that's the sod's law. It's like we're in February now, and it's like if someone comes at me, like you said, you're working on tracks, and it's like if you sent me something over, and it's like, crap, this is amazing, you know what I mean? Then it's like you want to kind of
years away from sending anything over to you.
But the thing is you say that, and like I say, going back to Lena and with Kirby as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like they've kind of sent stuff over that's just at like, especially with Lena, it's like, I've not really sent it to anyone, and I'm just very quite new to it and that, but it's all there. Do you know what I mean? So it's like sometimes you might hear something, and it's like, all right, yeah, there's definitely something in this. Do you know what I mean? And it can be worked with. So. I always say to people, just keep me posted with what you're working on. I mean, some people sometimes are a bit opposed to having someone work on the stuff, which is understandable. Do you know what I mean? As I say, the last thing I would want to do would be to ghost produce anybody. Just kind of help them in some kind of way, along with that. But yeah, I mean, paper recordings, bloody hell. I mean, Ben's he emailed the other day. Ben's who kind of Ben and Peter kind of who own the label. Ben is Flash Atkins, that is his producer name, and he was like, I've done the schedule and like we're booked up until January next year. I mean, with that, there's 3 offshoots of the label. Do you know what I mean? And that we've literally got like 2 releases a month, one at the beginning and one at the end. They'll be on different. It might be Paper Wave at the beginning of the month, Paper Disco and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of that kind of with it. Which is great, that's us set. But then the shitter with that is that, like I say, if something else comes along that's bloody amazing, you're like, oh God, how are we going to fit this in? You know what I mean? The other double-edged sword with that, and it only happens every so often, is you get artists who might be a bit pushy of wanting their music out, you know what I mean? And it's like, all that happens then is that you end up putting the release out and there's not a lot of breathing room for it, because you've got to be careful when you're posting stuff on social media, because you've seen the posts I do that we do. There's a certain language we use that's quite casual, it's not boasty. Do you know what I mean? We're certainly never like, yeah, we're the best bloody label in the world and we're this and we're that, but we might say this is an actual, slamming nosebleeder of a release or whatever. Thing is, if you're doing that of a release and then the week after you do it on another release and then another release because you've just everything stacked up, people are just like, shut up, you know what I mean? And it's like you need to kind of balance those kind of posts in between.
You've literally hemorrhaged from the amount of nosebleeds you've given us, like.
Totally, yeah, and it's like the same thing. If you're always kind of posting on your own profiles or whatever, it's just like, yeah, big things are coming. Watch this space. I mean, that's always the piss take kind of line, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
That's one of my.
Just had a really interesting meeting. Yeah. Some good things are in store, and it's just like. I mean, do you know, actually, I had a meeting at Shindigger Brewery the other day, and it was really good. Like I said, hopefully it will be some sort of collab on a release and with a beer. And he gave me like about 6 beers when I was there, which was really, George, he's called one of the lads, one of the founders, a really, really nice lad. And he said, because I gave him some records as well, and when I was leaving, he said, do you want some beers? And I was like, that's really nice of you. And I obviously wanted to post about the beers, as a really, not saying like, yeah, I got given all these, you know what I mean? But just because the cans look incredible anyway, and just to do some support. And I kind of, I had to sort of say why I was at Shindigger in a way, do you know what I mean? And I think I put, just been at Shindigger for a cool meeting, and I managed to pick up some beers whilst I was there. And as I was pointing out, I was like, God, it looks like I'm becoming like fucking DJ Facebook, He's just like, big things in store kind of thing, and it wasn't doing it as a like, oh, what you Shindigger for, it was just a case of like, oh, got these, really, which I didn't even say he gave them to me. I did say, put it across that I'd pick them up. So yeah, I think you've got to kind of counterbalance that as well. So yeah, I think that's certainly the way I do it. Less is more, I think, because it doesn't look. Basically, you can give each release room to breathe, and people don't get fatigue from it as well. I think that's quite an interesting point. What was the other point you asked on the back of that?
So the flip side, obviously, like some advice for people starting a label, and then some advice for, let's say, somebody wants to get signed by Sprechen or wants their release put out on Sprechen. What's the best way to get in touch with Chris Massey, which isn't going to annoy you or piss you off or get ignored, essentially? How should somebody approach that? Let's for Sprechen, and then, you know, maybe advice for reaching out to any label.
Yeah, I think like none of it pisses me off when anyone gets in contact, you know what I mean? Even someone who would send something that is like a million miles away from what the label is, do you know what I mean? You just have to like kind of you just have to kind of like laugh at it. If someone's sending something that's like some absolute throbbing drum and bass track, or it's like something that's like bouncy house, if that's even a thing anymore. You know, it's just a case of like, you know, thanks for sending this over, really appreciate it. It's probably not right for us, but, you know, best of luck. You've always got to appreciate the creativity and stuff. Do you know what I mean? I think that kind of stems with anything, really. The only one thing that kind of, it doesn't piss me off, it's because I've done it myself, and I think it's just a thing of being eager and sending it out, is someone saying, I've got this track, it's a demo, and they send you a wee transfer link of it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, just put it in a private SoundCloud link, because you need to just, I mean, I'm sometimes like working, say if I'm working on paper recordings, do a bit of an admin day, or I'm having to like do various things. It's easy if say if you said to me, like, Chris, I've got 4 tracks here, demos, you know, I've listened to them. I could just click on that link and just have them playing in the background whilst I'm working. Do you know what I mean? And then I can just keep replaying them. Whereas it's like, if people are just sending you, you know, demos on a wee transfer link, it's like you turn around and your flipping hard drive's cracking under the strain of just having various WAVs with it. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and then you just end up, yeah, it's just that's the one thing I would say is just send them on a private SoundCloud link. Do you know what I mean? I mean, there's a sense of like, you know, research the label that you're sending them to. I'm not as kind of, because Sprechen is quite diverse, and then because as another option as well, there is also paper recordings. As I said, there's quite a few platforms there that stuff could be released on. Do you know what I mean? I think if you're going to send them to other labels and labels that you really like, I would really research the label and the catalogue itself to make sure that it kind of fits within there. Do you know what I mean? I've sent stuff before. I sent it quite a popular label, quite a popular person who runs them. I won't say names or anything. Just a bit of a rude bastard, really. They got back to us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I won't book you for any events. Bing. No, it's not.
Blacklisted by Chris Massey. Absolutely. Good luck in Manchester now, eh?
No, it's not as petty as that. But, you know, that can just be a response, because ultimately they just might open their email inbox and they're getting sent that much fucking stuff that's just like totally irrelevant for the label. Do you know what I mean? So it's understandable. It's totally understandable. So yeah, I think that would be one thing. Certainly research the label, and certainly send it over as an easy enough to listen to stream, but also be prepared for like a bit of feedback on it as well. Do you know what I mean? I've certainly over time, lots of people I've worked with, I'm friends as well. You know what I mean? It's like you try to go back to them with a bit of critical feedback on something, and it's because it's something they've created, they can't see outside of what they've created. Do you know what I mean? And it's like you're sending it to people who are kind of, you know, on majority they're doing what they're doing because I suppose they sort of know what they're talking about a little bit as well. You're not always going to get it right, far from it, you know, but it's like I've been sent stuff and the stuff that still comes down, and it just kind of sounds too much too much in like a demo mode. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I think, you know, you try to feed that back and people they're not open to that feedback at all. Do you know what I mean? And that's fair enough. That's their prerogative, really. You know, you just have to kind of say then, all right, well, best of luck with it, you know. But I think, yeah, just taking a bit of critical feedback on the chin's always good. And yeah, just being decent about it more than anything. And I think that stems really for reaching out to, like I say, other labels as well, not just with us. Yeah, all them points, I would say.
Amazing. So I'm going to wrap up the podcast with another big question. And this one is to do with the dreaded lockdown we're in again and the pandemic. And it's something that we've managed to actually avoid talking for quite a lot of the show, which I never want these just to turn into pandemic podcast, so credit to us for that. But you know, certainly, you know, you're somebody who's very much at like the sharp end of like Manchester's music scene, with all the booking stuff you do, as well as the label side of things. So, you know, what are your predictions and plans for the rest of 2021? Are you quite optimistic at the moment about the being able to get back to normal by the end of the year, or are you still in sort of like emergency mode, or are you still just completely up in the air? You know, what's your
Yeah, I think really quite just a bit up in the air, because you just don't know what's going to get announced by the government. And I think until there's any kind of inkling as to what we're going to be able to do, you can't plan for anything. Certainly, you know, I think some venues have to just, you know, I suppose Free Island's a really good example of that. You know, because it's kind of such a big entity, is that, and they're able to just keep doing it and kind of advertise something, and if it gets cancelled or whatever, you just kind of move it, you know what I mean? And it's like something like that can't afford to just be like, yeah, do you know what, we'll just take our foot off the gas and just like lay dormant. You know, it can't, you know what I mean? It's like such a big place, as is, you know, places like Albert Schloss and stuff like that. You know, I think, yeah, I don't think we're going to be jumping around in sweaty basements and hugging each other anytime soon, put it that way. I hope we are, but I really don't think we will be. I think we'll be able, well, I'm kind of hoping that we'll be able to have kind of tier 2 type restrictions when things open, when we get to the summer, which will be sat socially distanced, you know, without that, you know, bloody essential food kind of thing that was so annoying last year. And also that like 2 households can mix, or 2 to 3 households. That's kind of what I hope for. And I think that's because that then means that things will be able to happen at the Refuge, certainly at Frey Island, and certainly at the Carlton Club as well. Do you know what I mean? And that will be, I mean, not only will it be some paid work, but it will also mean that we can start to do some kind of programming and you know, be creative again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. But yeah, it's anyone's guess, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It really is. I tend to try to stay away from watching the news, but I just dip in every so often, and it's just so depressing. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, so tough to answer. I'd love to get back to be able to doing kind of what we were doing. I mean, in a weird way, do you know, we were chatting, me and Richard were chatting about this, and he kind of said it, Rich from Supernature and with Sprechen, and he said, in a weird way, and I think Gina mentioned it as well, actually, it's like almost kind of not missing going out clubbing. Do you know what I mean? Whether that's an age thing, I don't know, but definitely missing a social kind of relationship with people. Do you know? I mean, look, I wasn't going out every Friday and Saturday and going raving until like 4 a.m. and stuff like that. You know, obviously I was working on those events and DJing at those events, so I certainly missed that kind of thing. But I suppose, like, you know, having earned my stripes of clubbing quite a lot, I wasn't, and I've got 2 dogs now, so I can't always go out all the time. You know, I certainly wasn't still in that place where I was going out all the time and raving and that, you know. So yeah, in a weird kind of way, certain things I have. Well, do you know, I say that, and then when we were able to actually do some social events last year, I was like, yeah, I am really, really missing this, to be honest with you. I mean, DJing at Frey Island last year in summer was brilliant. Do you know what I mean? Because it was. Have you been to it actually?
I was there one day when you were DJing, but you looked quite into it, so I didn't bother you. And then I was like, oh, I'll go catch Chris when he's finished, and you'd backdoor boogied before I got to say hi.
Yeah,
but that's my fault.
That's the thing. You can't really walk around and chat to people in there because you just, you know what I mean?
No,
you weren't allowed, were you? So it was almost, you could sort of grab a couple of minutes, then you'd see the security guy coming over to you and you'd be like, right, I've got to go. And you start off and go off. But that was really good because it was just like booking the beach bar at Electric Elephant, Croatia, you know, and it was like one day I ended up playing, because we had to cancel some DJs and so on and stuff like that. And I ended up having to do like 6 hours. And honestly, the thought of playing that 6 hours at a bar in town would fill me with dread. But it was incredible because just able to play. In fact, the mix of that is online, but just able to play like everything. Do you know what I mean? And it was a really, really enjoyable thing. So that was really nice. Do you know what I mean? And DJing at the Refuge on a Friday is always brilliant. Playing similar kind of set, and then Supernature stuff, that's always amazing. And then there was all the potential stuff we could have done with Sprechen, the See Through Hands release that we did. I really wanted to do a live thing at the Carlton Club with See Through Hands and Friends or something like that. Would have been it had been a sellout, and it would have been incredible. And also, I think because of where the label has got to now, where there's a few more signings on there that can do a live performance. Really, really wanted to start doing some stuff like that. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, that's all on hold. So I'm hoping that we might be able to do stuff like that. But again, that's not stuff personally. It wouldn't transpire well to a seated event. It does need to be stuff where you can kind of stand and enjoy it. I don't know. September, October, maybe, but who knows?
Yeah. I think one of the last live acts I saw was when you put on Night Giants at Yes.
All right, yeah, in the basement.
Yeah. That seems like a lifetime ago now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But here's to hoping, and the Tories have bundled every single thing they can when it comes to this pandemic, but we are getting vaccinated now, so hopefully we can get some sense of normality. And all we can do is hope, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite funny. Someone posted something the other day that was really funny, and it was almost like a statistics thing, and I think it was about like with the borders being closed, or it was something, and it kind of said about New Zealand, when it was closed, and then how many sort of cases and deaths followed, and it was like just this massive reduction in all these countries, and then it was kind of got to like the UK. It was just like, UK currently talking about which hotels to allow people coming into the country to use for self-isolated, and it's like X amount of thousands of deaths, and it's like that's the thing. I mean, I'm not sort of totally politics driven or following in that, but it's just like I can't believe that I can't believe they're getting it so wrong, and I can't believe that we all talk amongst ourselves, and it's like, why don't they just do this and this? And that's exactly what other countries are doing, and cases fall. But then the UK I don't know what it is, whether it's this Boris Johnson popularity contest of just wanting to not be seen as being the evil leader who's, he's the people's person and that, and he's not, he's a knob, and it's like, it's just, anyway, that's another podcast.
Yeah, there is another podcast. Also, DJing in bars in town as well. You mentioned that is another podcast as well, which I need to speak to someone about, that whole sort of bar vibe. And is it, what's the DJ there for? We could get into all of that, but we've already been going for 2 hours. Yeah. So I think we will say goodbye here, because it's been a really, really great show. And
fine, man.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Chris. And
no worries, man. Thanks for asking me. It's been good.